This is the School Success Podcast, a podcast for school leaders to learn from other school leaders what's working and what's not, and to get inspiration and encouragement, as well as strategies to grow school enrollment, connect with families, retain teachers, recruit teachers, and everything in between. You guys are heroes, and I cannot thank you enough for pouring into this next generation that's coming behind us. My goal is you will take at least one thing away from every episode that you can take back to your school to make it better than it is right now. Please enjoy the School Success Podcast. This podcast is brought to you by the Herzog Foundation.
Time for school.
Hey, School Success Makers. Welcome to another edition of the School Success Podcast. I'm your host, 𝒊𝒎𝒏𝒈, joined by my new friend, Tim Lundeen, who's the content creator and producer at Timothy Christian Schools in Elmhurst, Illinois. And he has started this podcast with the school students that are there. And we're going to dive into all of that today. I'm really excited about it because I love hearing students getting into media and marketing and different things inside the school, and he's actually done it, and it's and just started it recently. So we're going to dive into that. So if you guys are looking at maybe adding a podcast or some component of that to your school, you're going to get some strategies and takeaways from today's episode just on that. But before I make sure I don't take away any thunder from Tim, I'm going to pass it off to him to introduce himself. So Tim, welcome to the podcast today, sir.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on here, and I appreciate your interest in not only what we've been up to, but the fact that you want to share this and get other schools and school leaders involved in this.
Appreciate it. It's going to be a fun one. I always have fun with these conversations. And before we jump into any of those, I always start with the same question. So here's the question to start everything out. If I was to ever visit you in the Elmhurst, Illinois area, what would you say? Mitchell, you need to eat this and do this to experience everything that our area has to offer.
Do you like pizza?
Oh, yeah.
Deep dish pizza from 𝒊𝒎𝒏𝒈 is pretty much a requirement. A lot of folks around here would say you need to stop by Portillo's, which is a favorite hot dog stand. If you want to put it that way, right now they've got over 50 locations, but it started as just a simple little hot dog stand. And it's the best. Anybody that leaves the Chicago area and tries to get a hot dog, they're just disappointed to the nth degree. But definitely some 𝒊𝒎𝒏𝒈's pizzas in the mix, and a quick drive into the city is just a few minutes away, and enjoy the beaches that we have there and just hanging out around the different places downtown Chicago. And then you can just hop back into the suburbs and, enjoy what we have here too. There's a lot to do. That's for sure.
Awesome. My dad grew up in that area. He grew up in, Lake in the Hills area. So Chicago was kind of like where he went to go play as a kid or whatever. And so I grew up a diehard Chicago Bears fan. So I asked you earlier if you were into any of that, because my dad is from there. My grandpa lives in that area as well still. And so when I went to a Bears Packers game a couple of years ago, my first ever time to Soldier Field, and was like, all right, I got to try that. I tried both pizza places out, which was, what's the other one? There's like the two main ones that are deep dish.
There's
pizza.
A few. I mean, 𝒊𝒎𝒏𝒈's, Gino's East is one. There's another kind of a folded deep dish joint that's up there, but I've never been there.
Okay. I'm spacing the other one's name, but obviously Portillo, one of my dad's favorites is Portillo. So yeah. Chicago's got some good food, man. I ain't going to lie. That's for sure. So not good sports teams typically, but hey, good food at least. So that's good.
We won't go there.
Well, jumping in today, I'd love to just get your background on why are you in the podcast space at this Christian school? And obviously, I know a little bit about your background. So it's actually pretty cool what you do and why you are well-versed in this. But for those that are listening that don't know that yet, how did you get into what you're doing and what do you do?
Sure. So the principal of the school, just maybe 3 months ago, emailed me saying, hey, we want to put together a podcast for the high school. Would I be interested in producing it? And I said, sure. And the reason why he emailed me is because he and I had some conversations on the side, just like, what is the school doing when it comes to content creation, media in general? What are we really doing? And, as a small Christian school, but as a school in general, it's really hard to find not just the capital investment, but the square footage to do that. And it gets overwhelming and discouraging when a school wants to do something like media or podcasting. They just don't know how, or they don't know where to begin. And the reason why he contacted me was I have over 20 years experience in audio production and narration. I used to do audiobooks all the time, both narrating and producing them. And I don't know, I'm sure I've narrated over 150 books and produced over 700. And that used to be all the time. And I kind of backed off from that and started doing shorter format stuff, narrating for education companies, narrating for law school training companies, stuff like that is a lot of fun. And I also co-host a internationally syndicated radio program through Unshackled, which is in Chicago here, and also help do some post-production work and audio editing for them and other clients of mine. So you take all that kind of audio-based engineering and production and directing and talent work, and then focus it on students putting a podcast together. It kind of seemed like a good fit. And so that's why he reached out to me, and that's kind of what I brought to the table.
Love it. Well, you definitely have the background for sure. So we're having a podcast about a podcast, which I love.
Yes.
So tell me, okay, it came to you 3 months ago. Obviously, I listened to actually some of the episodes you guys did. They sounded great. The kids students did a great job having good dialogue back and forth. It was actually it was really easy to listen to, and it was fun. I thought you guys did a great job with it. So obviously plug that in there for anybody to listen to go find it and go listen to it. But how did it go 3 months ago from hearing the idea to getting students together and finding who to join? Kind of explain that process of actually starting this.
Yeah, it was an interesting feeling because I thought, you know what, it's not that complicated. When you understand the technology and how much the industry has changed and evolved, from my perspective as an audio engineer, I've seen how the technology and even distribution has changed over the decades. And it's gotten easier and easier, and it's lowered that barrier to entry. Sometimes that's a bad thing because it means anybody gets on board and they don't know what they're doing. Even though it looks good or sounds good, it just, you wonder why they even got involved. But once that's out of the way, the key issue is content and just hitting record. And so a couple of things, when the principal said, hey, let's do a podcast, I said, absolutely. One of the first things he said was, well, okay, great. Do you want me to do an email? Do you want me to email the whole school, all the student body in the high school and say, hey, we're starting a podcast. Let us know if you're interested, blah, blah, blah. And I said, absolutely not. I said, don't tell anyone. If you send out an email to 600 students, no one will read it. But if you tell no one, I guarantee you within a week or two, everyone will know this podcast exists. And that's kind of what happened. The way that I got about it is I asked my son. My son is a student at the high school. I said, hey, we want to do a podcast. Who should I talk to? And he said, there's these two students, they kind of, would kind of mess around with, they'd pull out the iPads and they'd do silly stuff, whatever, but they were pretending to do a podcast. And that's exactly who I wanted. And so I emailed them and I actually found them, went to the school's permission. And I said, look, this is what we're doing. What do you think? Are you interested? And who else should we talk to? And they recommended one or two other guys, like, oh, talk to him. And this guy, talk to his buddy. So we had them. I said, look, meet me at school early before first hour. And I just want to have a chat. What do you think this is about? What do you think we can accomplish? Would students even be interested? If you were involved in a podcast, why, with your busy schedule and how involved you are, why would you want to be even interested in helping do a podcast? I remember this one girl, she said, it sounds fun. And I said, well, what happens when it's not fun? And she's like, well, then it's going to be harder to commit to and even want to do it. And then I said, well, who's responsible for making it fun? You, so they realized like, oh, this is kind of for us. And this is something we can put together that we would enjoy. Because that's the other kind of warning that I gave the principal. I said, and he won't mind me sharing this, I said, if we do this podcast for high school and with the high school students, you can't give it to the marketing team. So sorry, Mitchell, I know that's your background. Because what the marketing team will do to it, and rightfully so, is they'll turn it into a program that promotes the school, usually for prospective parents, or even for existing parents that just want to know how well the school is doing, which any parent wants to know, public or private or charter. They want to know how well the school is doing, but none of the students will watch it or listen to it. It's not for them. So I said, don't let them get their hands on it because I know what they'll turn it into. It'll be great. It'll look amazing, but it won't be for the students. So my push was, let's grow this as grassroots as possible. And let's make it for the students and with the students so that they're the ones interested in watching it. and it means it has meant a lot as far as the growth goes. And like you mentioned, there have been a lot of different students involved. I intentionally didn't want to make it about one host or two hosts just like doing everything, because what if it's a junior in high school who maybe has an outgoing personality and everybody's like, oh, he'd be a great podcast host, but what if none of the sophomores even like the guy? Well, then they're not going to watch it. And then the seniors, they're already checked out. They've graduated. You're talking February, March of the school year. The seniors are really done, if you know what I mean. But it was like, I didn't want it just to be one kid, or what a lot of popular podcasts is, this cult of personality, where it's that one host who just talks to everybody. I didn't necessarily want to do that. I'd be open to it, but I didn't want to go that route right away. And that's why if you go to the podcast, you'll see I try to have as many students involved as possible, and they can pick the topics that they want to cover, whether it's interviewing a sports coach, or whether it's talking about, as a Christian school, they do cover some religious and spiritual subjects. If they want to go that route, we can do that podcast. Or honestly, the fun ones are just 4 students sitting around talking about nothing. Because that's really what, to them, that's what entertaining podcasts are. Just students sitting around talking about their day or something that happened last week they thought was funny. And it gives them a chance to understand a healthy way to approach the medium of podcasting.
I love it. So, and obviously it's very well done. Again, what's the name of it if you wanted to look it up real quick?
Okay. On YouTube, it's called TC Podcast, but there are other TC podcasts on YouTube, because the names are names, like the YouTube name is different from what you see with how you own the account. But just look up TC Podcast and you'll see Timothy Christian School. The TC Podcast exists to entertain, encourage, and edify the high school students at Timothy Christian Schools in Elmhurst, Illinois. That'll show up as a little tag underneath our channel. And you'll see we've got over 25 videos averaging, I don't know, about 150 views each, some of them less, some of them more. We also have the little shorts, and the shorts clips that kind of draw you into the longer podcast episodes. I don't know. The shorts are getting over 20,000 views in total combined. And this is just after maybe 2.5 months of work.
Hey, school success makers, Mitchell here. I just want to take a really quick break from the show to give a big, huge shout out to the Herzog Foundation. I absolutely love the Herzog Foundation. I've been friends and partners with them for a couple years now, but we're bringing it to a whole new level. And I'm excited to share that our very own School Success podcast is now featured on the Herzog Foundation Podcast Network. The Herzog Foundation is a powerhouse of resources designed to support schools like yours, from free training events through the Herzog Foundation Institute to their incredible online news publication, The Lion, and of course, our new podcast, Home. They have everything you need to stay informed and inspired. And if you're dreaming of starting your own Christian school or co-op, don't miss their online course, Schoolbox. It's a fantastic resource to help you get started on the right foot. At School Success, we're proud to partner with the Herzog Foundation to bring you these valuable tools and insights. So visit herzogfoundation.com to explore all they have to offer. Trust me, you won't want to miss out on these amazing opportunities for growth and success. And I love all the people over there, and I know you guys will too. So please go check them out, and you won't be disappointed. Now, back to the show. That's awesome. I love it. And so those that are listening that are school leaders going, man, maybe we should have a podcast. So you kind of crafted it as like, hey, I don't want the marketing team to get a hold of it and kind of switch the memo. But what if somebody's listening going, hey, I do want that, or hey, no, I don't want that. And should it be just the students, or should we have adults on it? Like, obviously there's so many different ways a school could roll this out and do it.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear kind of just your thoughts on maybe both sides looking at it of what should a school be thinking through and doing? Because it sounds like you've already done a lot of that, like processing of like, here's the direction of what we wanted to do and why. I'd love to kind of just hear your thoughts on
Sure,
that for those
sure.
listening.
Yeah, I just want to preface my answer by saying, like a lot of people, like a lot of parents especially, my number one goal is to have every student off of social media. It seems counterproductive, but anyone with an intelligent understanding and discernment knows what social media can do to destroy a developing individual. It's not always the healthiest thing in the world. However, it's not going away. So what are we doing to prepare the students to understand this? If this is how they in their generation consume information, it's how they're marketed to, it's how they're sold to, it's how a lot of them will be learning things. They may have a hobby on the side that they've exclusively learned how to do just through this social media content creation and podcasting. And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. It has, like I said, it has lowered that barrier to entry and opened up a vast amount of information, good and bad, to students of all ages. And when we look at it in a school setting, first of all, as the producer of the podcast, I am always there. I'm in the room with them, but I've never been on the podcast. I've never been sitting at the table with them. What I'll do is if we know what the topic is going to be ahead of time, I'll just make sure that it's steering and guided in the right direction so that they're not wasting their viewers' time, but also so that they're not getting off track or getting lost in the weeds of something. So I'm there for that. I'm also there to filter, because not every student is perfect. We all make many mistakes. That's just a known fact. And it's not just about me, what I'm not doing is I'm not cleaning up and editing these podcasts in post-production to make them all so seamless and perfect. But if they go off on a tangent on a personal story that's like they think is funny, but it's not really landing, or they're like 35 seconds in and it might not be appropriate. There's nothing wrong, nothing like evil or bad, but it's like, what, that story, that thing that happened at summer camp last year, I'm just going to delete it, just so you know. And the students are like, okay, they thought it was funny. I'm like, this is not going to be good. I don't want them to look horrible, but it's also not my job to make them look perfect, because then that's unrelatable. Nobody will watch that either. So I'm definitely in the room. I'm definitely offering, working as a filter and a barrier to making sure that, it's good content, but also that's protecting the students. Because like a lot of parents are going to say, students involved in a podcast, isn't this on the internet? Isn't this out there forever? Well, yes, it is out there forever. Just like, some of these sophomores and juniors are being told, you gotta focus on school, focus on education, get your grades right, get whatever sport, athletic, or extracurricular activity in place, because that is out there forever. And all the college recruiting groups are going to be looking at you online. If you have social media presence, they will be looking at your social media presence. So it's not just whether you're on the podcast or not, it has nothing to do with it. Your kids' information and whatever life that they have on the internet is out there forever. What we get to do is just put a grown-up in the room and say, let's do this as productively and healthy as possible. Kind of as an aside to that, like I said, the TC podcast exists to entertain, to encourage, and to edify the students. I didn't say educate. They are educated all day. And I wanted this to be something they couldn't get anywhere else. Now, some of the podcasts will be educational, but it has to be at least entertaining or edifying or encouraging in some way as well. That was a big factor in just making sure that we weren't wasting our viewers' time with just mindless content. Do you know what I mean? A lot of the podcasts out there that are just goofy or weird, especially for younger ages, unfortunately, it's people doing, I don't know, anything. Get ready with me in the morning, makeup tutorials, fitness tutorials, anything that says, look at me, look at how young and beautiful and healthy I am, focus on me, but there's no content whatsoever, or they're just selling you something. And we are avoiding that entirely by saying, look, we can use this medium and train the students up to use it and understand it in a way that's beneficial in their community and the community at large. I don't know if that answers some of how this conversation started that you asked me.
Yeah, because I want a school that's listening to go, oh, I want to do this, but what should I be thinking about? How should I be actually rolling this out? Because I think I've talked to schools before and they love to do something like this, but they don't know where to start. And so if they go, oh, you know what, we're going to do it without, if it doesn't bring in new students, totally fine. The mindset is it's not that. And I think that'll automatically help them be a step ahead, because I think if they're automatically going, well, we're going to do this, but it has to make us this much extra money or we're not going to be able to do it. I think you got to get rid of that. In my opinion, you got to get rid of that mindset to go, well, we're here to teach the students something that they're going to use maybe later on in life. It's a thing that's going to help pass out information to other people of the families that are interested. And so I think that's great to get the mindset of like, okay, what is the point? What's the why of why we're actually doing this podcast to begin with? Once you figure out the why, I think the other one that they're going to get hung up on, which I know I would be hung up on, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, is, all right, what do we need to buy for this? Do we need to buy anything? Sure. Do we need 1 mic, 2 mics, 4 mics? What do we set up? Like, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what should they be even prepared financially to kind of do this and do it right?
Yeah. Well, one of the first things I would encourage people to understand is, like I'd mentioned earlier, that the equipment necessary has changed so much. And I'll give you an example. Here's a little object lesson for those joining us in video and not just audio. What I have is a cell phone. This is my cell phone. And then there's this thing, which is a microphone inside a little fuzzy, but this is the microphone. And I plug the microphone into my phone because I'm an audio geek and I really want it to sound good. Now you can skip this step and just go straight with the phone. And any phone made in the last, 3 years will be plenty capable. And you take the phone, you hit record, and you put it in someone's face and you ask them a question. You are now a podcaster. That's all it is. Now, if you're of a certain age and generation, when you hear the word podcast, you probably think audio only. But unfortunately, all podcasts, all decent long-term podcasts have some video element. It's not necessary. It definitely is not necessary, but it's going to go there anyway, so you might as well prepare for it. If you go to the TC Podcast webpage, after the principal asked me to produce this podcast, he said someone wants to support the program and we can get the equipment. And it's not that expensive if you want a little heads up. I don't know where you are, where you order your stuff. Anticipate, a couple $1,000s. In some schools, that's a fortune. Okay, but if you have some families to support it, maybe they can chip in. It's not a ton of money. It's far less than my studio, for example. So a couple $1,000s gets you equipment. Before we even had the equipment, I had 4 videos produced already with this phone. And the first video was I pulled up the phone, I gave it to one of these students. Remember, I got some students on board at that meeting before school about, do you guys want to do this podcast or not? I gave them my phone and I said, walk up to your peers and ask them a simple question. If we did a podcast, would you watch it? It's a yes or no question. And they walked up and down the hallways. Hey, if we did a podcast, would you watch it? Hey, if we did this Timothy podcast, would you watch it? If Timothy Christian did a podcast, would you watch it? And of course, everybody's saying yes. A couple people said maybe, depends on what it's about. One teacher said no, which is really funny. And of course, we kept that in the video because it's funny. Of course, I know the guy. He's a great teacher. So he understands what we're doing. Once we got the equipment and I showed it to the students, they realized, like, we've already been doing this. This equipment is just kind of an equipment upgrade. It doesn't really impact the purpose, the vision, the potential of what we're doing. It's just a couple microphones on a table. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So if somebody is like, we really want to do this, where do we need to start? You can start with as little as a phone. And I know most of the students have one of these. Now, whether or not you can control, the content, the videos that they're capturing, the audio and all that stuff, whether or not your school has a policy as far as capturing video and audio. I know a lot of modern schools, before your kid is even allowed to attend the school, the parents have to sign a waiver saying, this school can use the image and likeness of my student basically for the school year, because you never know when the marketing department, our good friends in marketing, are going to just show up with a camera and take pictures of your kid at the basketball meet, or take pictures at this big social event they're doing, or grab an interview about how awesome they did on their latest, their latest competition. They want to put that on the website. Instead of constantly asking for permission from parents to do this, they just sign the contract at the beginning of the year saying, my kid is part of this community and we understand everything is recorded. Literally everything is recorded. There's cameras in every hallway of every school, if the school is a good school. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Once you get the equipment in place, like I said, a couple $1,000s, you've got a recording device, you've got microphones plugged in. If you want to capture video, you can. Again, the first, like I said, 20, 25 episodes that we have are using this great equipment. And if anybody's interested, just shoot me an email. I'll tell you the list of stuff you could get. But the video is still recorded with my phone. I bet I could even get better video with a better phone. But honestly, video capture is not even, video capture is probably third in importance. Audio capture is second in importance. The number one thing in importance is content. That's the most important thing. So the gear question, a lot of people get hung up on what gear should I get? What do I really need? That is not the number one important question. The number one important question is, what are you trying to accomplish? That's the most important question you can ask for podcast creation.
This is great, Tim, because I'm learning a lot, and I know everybody else is as well with this. So if they're starting and they go, okay, I'm going to maybe get $2,000 in funding, which guys, I'm sure you could find some business person in the group that would, as a business write-off, they would say, hey, as long as you say thanks to the so-and-so for giving us the money for this, boom, now that's a marketing or a tax deduction for them. Sure, you can find somebody that would say, I'm willing to sponsor the podcast program or whatever. So that should be easy. I feel like, to get a couple $1,000s to do that. But not everybody has a Tim at their school that is expert in all this for editing, setting it all up, and doing what you do. So what would you say to get somebody over that hump? If they're like, yeah, we found $2,000, we're going to buy all this equipment. Now what do we do? What do you suggest to the schools that need a Tim in their life?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, there's only one of me. Gosh, that's a good point, because in my opinion, there needs to be a grown-up in the room. And it's our job. It's our role. If you just say, okay, kids, here's the technology, have at it. That's where you go into this danger, this minefield of kids uploading content randomly to the internet that is there forever, whether it's on their personal social media or on YouTube as a group of some kind. You also have the issue of the fact, like in our podcast says TC Podcast, at the end of every podcast is our email address, podcast@timothychristian.com. So these students on this podcast, they're not doing it for them. The school's name is on every episode. So it's that accountability that needs to be there. So even if I'm not at your school, there's got to be someone, some adult, a parent, anybody with background in. And the cool thing, it'd be any background. Like my background is audio production, but it doesn't need to be. Just a parent who understands the importance of it, that can dedicate a little bit of time a week. It doesn't take much. And I can explain that in a little bit as well. After that, anything that you can use to complicate the production, get the student involved. So like I said, I have this audio gear. It takes me literally, 8 minutes to set up this audio gear. And I do have to set it up and take it down every single time for now, because we're trying to figure out this square footage question of where do we want to put this long term. But for now, I can set it up and take it down in about 8 minutes. It doesn't take much time. But video is not my thing. I've left it out of my career for, like I said, 20 plus years. It's not my thing. But it's so simple by just hitting record on the phone and using what you have. I don't do color correction. I don't do all the fancy stuff. I don't use expensive software. All the software I use for producing this thing is free. It doesn't take an expert, just somebody who knows how to point and click and maybe drag something. But get the students involved. I guarantee you, even a school that is really small, that has, a school with 50 students in high school, that's 9, 10, 11, and 12th grade, 50 students, one of them understands content creation and is at least interested in it. Of the 50, how many do you think consume content creation? All of them, right? So at least one of them is like, this is interesting. I think I could have a knack at this. And you tell that student, like, can you just take like an hour to look up something on YouTube about how I can transfer this video from my phone to this and how we can edit it? They'll figure it out. It is not complicated at all. And that's kind of where we're at as a school. The next phase for next school year is really locking in what students would be great long-term for. Like, this is my extracurricular. This is my thing that I kind of want to dedicate my spare time to. Even this year I had a senior come up to me and say, like, this is really cool. I like what you guys are doing. I'd love to do the video side of thing. We got 3 cameras and do angles and stuff. And I'm like, dude, you're a senior. You're done. He already has work. He does he paid work in video editing and stuff like that. He does social media posts for people. Like, I can't pay him. I can't go that route. What I needed was like a freshman or a sophomore who's like, I really want to do this, because then they're there for the next 3 years. But definitely get an adult who knows what we're doing or knows what you're trying to accomplish, and get students involved who are at least understanding and willing to learn. That's kind of what I would recommend.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you'll see when you give students permission and give them the ownership of this, they're going to step up. I think it's just natural. I remember when I was a youth pastor years ago, you take the kids that are specifically maybe the more difficult or challenging ones, and you say, hey, I want you to be in charge of devotion tonight, or you're in charge of prayer or trash or whatever it is. They're like, you want me to be in charge of it? And you're like, yeah. And you just see kind of like, wow, he's expecting this of me, and that the mindset changes. And I think the same thing can happen with this as well, is where you say, hey, I want you to help with the video. Can you dive in and learn that tonight when you get home, or the audio or whatever? I think whoever's listening, I think you'll be surprised the willingness of somebody to step up, especially if they already have an interest in it. And then you kind of feed into that interest and be like, hey, this could be a resume builder for you. You could maybe use this as later on in work or college or whatever they want to do. Yeah, I think you'll all be very, very surprised with who's willing to step up for this. And
there's a couple of things I want to mention though. One of the hurdles that I've noticed is I have had students who say they're interested in something, and I don't know if they're just saying it because they say yes to a lot of things. Hey, would you be interested in helping out? Like, oh yeah, that sounds cool. Yeah, that sounds cool. It's not the same as saying, yes, I will be there, or yes, I will do that task. It's like, oh, that's cool. Like, I'm not looking for those people. One of the hurdles was making sure that the people who say they are interested in helping up, that they show up. I remember a long time ago, the quote, 90% of success is showing up. It doesn't matter if you can do the other 10%. If you don't show up, nothing gets done. So make sure you're finding the students that are actually who would say they're going to be there, they're going to be there. And then the other hurdle that I've found, which is really interesting, and I suppose I should have known this, is the generation of students, they're bombarded and they consume so much content, but it's really surprising to realize how they don't know how to create content. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
They watch stuff all the time, or they're doom scrolling, or they're just staring at their phones, and they're getting so much. But if you say, okay, now it's your turn, they'll be stuck. I've had many students in the podcast studio at the table where it's like, okay, why don't you guys talk about this? Talk about the upcoming school dance, or you talk about relationships at school. Talk about the fact that you guys don't know how to do the whole relationship thing. How come you aren't talking to each other? It's fun stuff like that, whatever. And there'll be kids at the table who's saying like, man, I feel like I talk all the time, but now that I'm actually at a microphone and my brain just stops, it's like, I don't know what to say. And it's just, I don't know if it's a fear or a concern of like, oh, I don't want to say the wrong thing, because they know they're safe. It's a perfectly safe environment. But that's something to keep in mind, that as you're recruiting students, so to speak, that you're getting students who not only are just interested, but they know they have to show up. They have to be willing to learn and stretch themselves, but also to give them the grace and the mercy to understand, look, you don't have to be perfect. We can learn how to create something together. Even if they feel lost or just like, I don't even know what to say, we can work on that. It's, as long as you're at the table, there's something we can do. You just hit record, and that's like 90% of the problem.
100%. And repetition. The more you do it, the more comfortable you're going to be. I remember when I first became a youth pastor, I gave my first devotion. I was shaking. I was so nervous. And I was like, why am I shaking? I love talking about Jesus and how awesome he is. And why am I freaking out around kids, students? But I was.
Yeah.
The more I did it, I got more comfortable. And then I remember just this morning, actually, I haven't gone to networking meetings in a long, long time, just because of the nature of our business. Kind of work with schools all over the country. So it doesn't really make sense to do a local one, but a friend of mine leads one, and he's like, hey, you want to come tomorrow for this business owner get together? And I said, sure. And it was Christian based. And so I went this morning and I did my little spiel, like, hey, 𝑻𝒊𝒎𝒏 with School Success. Well, and I gave my quick thing, and I sat down, and the person next to me was like, whoa, you're really fast. That was really good, because I knew exactly what I was supposed to say, what I needed to say. Right. And I sat down, and you could tell, because I've been doing this for a long time, and I knew you'd be the same way, who doesn't do that often, who has to stand up in front of a group and say just who they are and what they do. The ones that can ramble, and then they keep going, or they're shaking. And I was like, oh, wow, this is really interesting, because I haven't been in this since COVID. Pre-COVID, I was doing still more networking in person. And that was just actually interesting this morning, watching who hasn't done it in a long time or doesn't do it regularly. So repetition, obviously, to get more and more comfortable in all of this. But I would love to know about numbers for you when it comes to a school with this. I know you just started this 3 months ago, but a school might go, man, we have a big school. We have 50 kids who want to do this. Is there a point where you get too many cooks in the kitchen where there's hey, you got to cap it at a certain amount or rotate people through? So is there a specific number of students that schools should have in mind to do this properly, or at least a minimum and a maximum maybe in your mind of what you would say?
Well, what's interesting is some of the some of the people like at an arm's length in this conversation thought we needed a certain kind of equipment, and it was like a couple microphones and maybe a camera, whatever. And I was able to kind of not push back entirely, but I leaned into that by saying, look, we need 4 microphones. We need, it's just enough. Three or 4 people at a table. Do you know what I mean? Even if 2 of them are dominating the dialogue, it's fine. There's 2 other people there listening. And you, the listener, if it's a visual element, the listener is the 5th person at the table. They're just sitting there experiencing what's going on. The majority of the time these students are on these podcasts, they're not talking to the camera. They're talking to each other, which is why I think podcasts in general are so powerful lately, and why they've had a huge impact on our culture, because it's people talking to each other, not trying to sell or present a fake image to a camera. And with that in mind, you need at least a few people on these things, like students specifically. We've done podcasts where there are teachers on the podcast, but they're guests, and the students are the ones running this interview and interviewing these favorite teachers of theirs, so you can have adults in the podcast, nothing wrong with that. But at least a handful of students that can hold their own in front of a microphone is a good place to start. Now, whether or not you can have too many, that comes down to the content you're trying to produce and, again, what you're trying to accomplish. The cool thing about the TC podcast is we have subcategories. So if it's ever a religious or spiritual context, then it's Bible talk. So you're listening to Bible talk on the TC podcast. If it's sports related, and we have all the sports teams that the schools have, well, then it's sports talk on the TC podcast. And if it's kids just bantering and talking about whatever, talking about what they're doing this summer, then it's just talk on the TC podcast. And you can extrapolate that out if you want. I'm sure we're going to do a geek talk at some point, just to, if there's kids that are like, oh, I think it'd be really cool to do this, I'd say, great, bring 3 of your friends and we'll do something. We'll record it, see where it goes. And when you do it that way, there's an advantage to having a good number of kids involved, because the other side note, the other, flip side of the coin of this is the people that have a lot of time on their hands are not as interesting as you think. And the people you really want to hear from are busy. I've told everybody on the podcast team, busy people get stuff done. That's just what they do. They're capable or they're good at something. And those, honestly, are the people we want to hear from. And so I've talked to students saying, like, hey, do you want to be involved in a podcast? Would you like to be on an episode of something? Do you want to talk about something? I know you're busy, but that's why we're reaching out to you. So honestly, if you have too many kids involved, the cool thing is, if you can get 4 of them, on a Tuesday morning, but you can't get them any other time that month, it's fine, because you've got guys coming in on Thursday that are going to do the lacrosse talk, because they're going to talk with the coach, or the girls are going to come in and talk about girls soccer. You can spread this thing out. That's another reason why I wanted to avoid it being one host doing everything. So there's advantages to having a lot of people involved.
Okay. I love it. And so no max then. You would just say, like, rotate it through based on who wants to be involved and actually dive deep into it.
Yeah. The advantage is, like I said, when you have a mission, when you have a purpose behind what you're doing that's concise enough, like our goal is to entertain, encourage, and edify the students. It could be any student doing that, so long as there's a good reason why they're on the podcast. And of course, if they do a really good job and it kind of clicks, they'll come back. They'll say, can we do this again? Or their peers will say, hey, I saw the podcast. It was really cool. When are you doing the next one? And that kind of gets them to be like, yeah, that is kind of cool. But the other side of that is it's not theirs. It's not my podcast. It's the schools. It's for the students. And so, I remember telling the production team, I said, one of these days, one of my goals is to have every student in the school on the podcast. Now imagine a school with over 500 students. How would you do that? I know how I would do it. But for those other educators and producers out there, think about it. It's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. So, okay. For those that are listening, obviously, a couple $1,000, get all this equipment, start getting students together, do some interviews, and just start. Obviously, just try it. I feel like, obviously, as people listen to this, will be over the summer, probably when this episode launches, so they could do this fall, put something together, try and do an episode a week. Do you feel like the episode a week, right? Is that kind of what you kind of have stuck to, is one a week or more?
I don't have as locked in of a schedule of like, well, every Monday we do whatever. I know we will, but what I wanted to do is just get stuff out there so that students could look at the content and be like, oh, they got 20 episodes already or whatever. Like, I wanted them to just see what it could be. You should have some kind of consistent schedule, but the cool thing again, if you focus on a 12 to 15 minute podcast, you can record like 4 of them and then schedule their release so that, every Tuesday, these episodes are coming out, but you recorded them, a month ago. And I think a lot of people know that, but you can always slip in something that's contemporary, like, hey, that thing coming up, something happened at the last homecoming. It was really exciting. Let's talk about it. I think there's nothing wrong with that. You can kind of add that to your schedule, but definitely, like you had just said, record something, do something, show them that it's not that hard. And then the creativity is like, oh, okay, I get it. This will work. We can do this. I have an idea. And you'll get people emailing you or stopping you in the hall, like, I have a really great idea about this podcast I want to do. And you can just look at them and say, sounds good. Let's do it.
I like it. Do you recommend having one called School Talk, and it's all about admissions and marketing and why people should go to the school? Or you're like, no, we're keeping that out of there?
Honestly, if I was a prospective parent, I would already be getting all the marketing material from the school anyway. And if I found out the school had a podcast, that it was just the students talking to each other, I would want to know among what kind of people am I sending my student? So I don't need them to make something for me. I just need them to make something for themselves. And I can see, okay, if these are the kind of people my son will be hanging out with, that's good. I like that. I like what I see. These are decent people. They're not perfect. They're not edited. They're not hyper photoshopped. They're not, you know what I mean? It's not overproduced to the max. It's just normal people sitting at a table having a conversation, whether it's the sports talk, whether it's the Bible talk, whether it's just people talking, shooting the breeze. To me, that is invaluable to prospective parents because it's not produced for them. It's just produced for the students. So that's kind of what I would lean into.
Hey, I just want to take a really quick break from the podcast to highlight one of our amazing partners and sponsors, ClassReach. If you're a new school administrator or founder and are struggling to keep up with all the hassles of planting a new school, like collecting tuition, communicating with parents, or handling student data, then you need ClassReach. ClassReach is the all-in-one software that helps with everything from admissions and tuition to classroom management and parent communications. Sign up for a free consultation with one of their school specialists and see how ClassReach can help your school grow today. You guys can check them out online, classreach.com. They are a kingdom-minded company, and I love their leadership team there. I've become friends with a lot of them. They truly are a great company. I support them, and I love them, and you guys will love them too. Check them out at classreach.com. Now, back to the show. I agree. It's authentic. I think about when I am on social media, immediately if I see a video and it says sponsored and it's like a thing, I just immediately am like, I don't like that type of content. It just seems fake to me. It doesn't seem real. And I'm like, So if you're right, if you have just a podcast, it's just students talking and they're talking about good things that are beautiful and good and like very Christian, you're like, man, that's awesome. They're not saying we're better than the school down the street because of this, this, and this. Like, it just,
well, they will say that. I mean, we have got our rivals. But what I need to do is I need to call up those other schools and say, let me help you start a podcast. And they'll get some healthy rivalry, because we all want the rising tide raises all ships. We want to see each other doing well, but there'll always be some infighting there.
Amen. That's good. Just like Packers Bears, but separate. All right. Last question for you, Tim, before we sign off for today. I love asking our guests just to share one final piece of advice. I know this all has been advice, but one final piece of advice for the school leaders listening. It could be on podcast or it can be on anything you want, but what would that final piece of advice be?
Sure. Well, how much time do I have?
5 minutes.
A minute. How much?
5 minutes if you want it.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'll say 2 things. First, I know there are worries and concerns. Like I mentioned, some parents or even teachers might be like, I don't know if this is a good idea. These are kids that are being recorded. It's on YouTube. It's on Spotify. It's on iTunes. It's out there and people can watch this. It's there forever. Yeah, it is. Like a lot of other things in their life. if your kids are athletes and they're, at least at our school, a lot of our athletic, especially at the upper levels, a lot of our athletic competitions are recorded. They will be live streamed. Some of our concerts in the auditorium are live streamed. So it's not just like, oh, I don't know how I feel about our students sitting at a podcast telling stories. It's they already have been. Picture your kid playing basketball and he misses the winning shot and your team loses. That was live streamed. Now, if we don't teach him, that's fine. You don't have to be devastated by it. If we don't teach them how to understand whether or not that was recorded and the whole world can see it, that doesn't define your value and worth. Well, then we're doing it right. If we can help them understand what's going on here. I know that that's really important, that we don't just let the kids do whatever they want, because they'll inevitably do something wrong or foolish or stupid. And yes, it is out there forever. But that doesn't mean we should avoid it or ignore it, if that makes sense. And kind of as a to incorporate that and kind of close off a general piece of advice. Like I said, I would love for every student to delete social media from their life and not let it negatively influence them. But if we ultimately are afraid of the impact that podcasts can have on students, then we will fail to train them for the impact they can have on podcasts.
Tim, this is solid, man. This is good advice. And I agree, being off social media for kids, I think most adults should be off social media in a lot of ways too. It's mostly not a good influence. And it's doom scrolling. Like you said earlier, you said doom scrolling. Yeah. I think we're all guilty of that one day or another. So thank you for this. Thank you for your encouragement. Thank you for your ideas and your strategies. And I'm hoping everybody who's listening, go start a podcast, do something with your students to teach them something that's going to outlive them a little bit more further out of high school, that they can maybe start their own podcast. Maybe it's a podcast they start because they want to encourage others in the faith or in some capacity that they know really well. So teach them, give them something else. And obviously, if you need to, just re-listen to the episode again. I think you could probably even do it on 1.5 speed and you get it done even quicker, because I don't think we talk too fast. Well, I probably talk too fast, to be honest with you, but Tim's good, so you'll be fine with his part. So Tim, thank you for your time today. Thank you for starting the podcast with your students over there and teaching them. And thank you for teaching our listeners how to also do this for their school as well. I really appreciate your time today.
Absolutely. My pleasure. I hope it was enlightening. I hope it was entertaining, encouraging, and edifying.
And it was. Well, another huge shout out and a thank you to Tim for taking time and being on the podcast today. I love what he's doing with the students there in Illinois to help them run a podcast, start a podcast there at their school. And I'm hoping that you guys who are listening today will go, my goodness, we could do the same thing. And so I encourage you guys, start a podcast, do something in the media marketing space with your students, and start it this fall as you guys are about to start back. Most likely as you're listening to this podcast, you'll be about to start the fall. And so prepare that, launch that. If you need to, of course, re-listen to the episode and learn from these different pieces that Tim shared, that you guys can then do this for your school. I would love to see it too. So if you do it, please let us know. Go to our website, schoolsuccessmakers.com, and send us a link. I'd love to tune in and listen to what your students are creating there at your school. But real quick, guys, before you go, 3 quick free resources that we have here at School Success. And the first one is the podcast. You're listening to it right now. We are dropping episodes every single Monday morning, so make sure you are tuning back in for those. And if you don't have to manually do that, you can just subscribe to it. I know you guys have heard this spiel from anybody else that you subscribe to for podcasts, but subscribe, like, share, review, the whole thing. It really does mean a lot to us. And if you're loving the content, go share it with another school educator, school leader that you know. Send them the text and link of it, and so they can listen to it as well. The second one is on our website. We have a weekly newsletter we send directly to your inbox called the School Success Report. It's different things that we have seen in the industry that we want to make sure you're aware of, different articles to help make you more and more successful. And so it's a quick read that you guys can scan through, read different articles if you see any interest in them. We do some teacher shout outs and some fun things in there as well. So make sure you're subscribed to that. Last but not least, our private Facebook community called School Success Makers. Completely free. Go subscribe, or not subscribe, go join it and be a part of it. And you can ask questions, get to know other school leaders that are in the group. I'm personally in there. I'd love to see you guys in there as well. Community is such an incredible thing that a lot of people don't have, and we're trying to help craft that. I know in person would be so much better, but since it's a little bit more harder to do that, we want to make sure you guys are in there and have a virtual community that you can chime into, speak into, and get stuff from, as well as give to them as well. So make sure you're into the School Success Makers Facebook group. And I think that's all I got for you guys today. So we will be back here next week with another awesome guest as usual on the School Success Podcast. We'll see you then. The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of the Herzog Foundation.